between today's child who's been raised electronically and who must still live in a literate world, because we are still in a literate world, that there's a 2,400-year gap between that boy or girl and his parents.
And his parents, who grew up in a literate society. Well, the alphabet, the phonetic alphabet, the beginnings of Western literacy came in about 500 BC. And since then, between then and now, is approximately 2,500 years. And we are the first post-literate generation, as it were. That is we have bypassed the literate world of hardware and the lineal left hemisphere technology. We have bypassed it by moving once more again into the altogether world, the holistic world of the right hemisphere people, who are the third world people. So what is happening to our own children is we're watching them become third world.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that they feel much more groupy and trendy than they do private or goal-oriented.
I see.
And so the disc jockeys help this along in a huge way, and there's all the nostalgia. By the way, one of the big marks of the loss of identity is nostalgia. And so revivals on all hands in every phase of life today. Revivals of clothing, of dances, of music, of shows, of everything. We live by the revival. It tells us who we are or were.
At the time that my father made these remarks, we were working on the laws of media. Revival is one of them. Every innovation brings back into play some old form in a new way. Not just by recasting old forms as art forms, but also by giving them a new sort of salience. So the motor car, let's say, brings back the knight in shining armor. The car itself, the tin suit, is now not just something you wear as clothing, but you put the horse inside it along with you, and you have the knight of the road. You have the old thing in a new form. Every innovation does this. Movies come back in a new way as art forms. Television is now getting retrieved as an art form, a revival. The minute it stops being castigated in the media and being regarded as an aesthetic experience, you know the revival is underway and something big in the environment has changed.
We're reached a point now where everybody 24 years and under is the TV generation, right?
Yes.
Do you feel these young people out there under 24 have been totally tribalized?
They have lost their sense of direction. They do not have goals. They don't have objectives. And that is putting it mildly.
You think that's new?
I think that is typical of the 24 years and under. And yes, I think that's new.
The TV generation is now entering its old age. TV generation was in its 20s in 1975, 77, when my father spoke with Mr. McManus. And these people are now, they have children of their own that are 25, 27, and they have a different set of priorities and a different agenda. With this hindsight, we can see the effects and the nature of television rather clearly, especially now that TV is the content of another medium. So we're taking TV as an aesthetic experience instead of decrying it all the time. And TV is now an art form, a programmable art form. It's also now the content of the computer and the internet. You go on the internet, you can watch TV. We have something very unusual happening. At the same time, we put the internet on TV. We have two enormously powerful media, TV and internet, which are taking each other as content. And this has never happened in our experience that I know of ever before. It's presenting us with a completely new situation, and one that has no precedence, and we have to make it up as we go along. How do we deal with this? We don't know what the effects are. We're living them.
The violence of the media, you say, itself, invading those not prepared for it. It's not the content that's primary, it's this invasion of privacy that people are not prepared for. that is destructive.
Recently had this trial of the young man who appealed to Kojak as his alibi for murder. This is a pathetic thing because nobody ever mistook fictional entertainment violence for reality. It's impossible. Only people who are leading merely a drugged fantasy life could do that. And there is the strange factor that television is quite a potent drug. It is addictive, it is an inner trip, and it is a tranquilizer. And recently the Detroit Free Press offered $500 for anybody who would stop watching television for a few days. And they didn't get many takers.
The idea of trying to deny ourselves one or another medium for a period of time raises the matter of the addictiveness of media. All of our media are enormously addictive. I mean, they're incredibly addictive. Imagine trying to do without the telephone. Or imagine, for example, if we got rid of the computer tonight, all of them. The whole culture, all our business, our finance, everything would crash. We are addicted as a culture to these media. The little experiments that have been performed from time to time of inviting people or groups to do without media for a while just point to this larger factor that is the entire society that is addicted and profoundly addicted.
There is a great resurgence of interest in Marshall's work, and nobody has been more surprised by it than I. I wonder if it has anything to do with, first, a new generation, the previous generation being scarcely aware of Marshall's name, which was very hard to explain, but a new generation now, and they're looking for explanations. It's almost like having come full circle, isn't it? Marshall considered himself primarily as a teacher. He was happiest when he was teaching. And the lectures, well, it was a way of developing his ideas, of spreading them. But he liked to get students. He'd have many, many, many evenings here just surrounded by students. And they would toss the ball back and forth. And he'd get new insights that way. And also you could see the young people's minds expanding when they'd grab a new idea and expand on it. And that gave, I think, it gave Marshall the most satisfaction of anything else he was doing.
By the way, at this moment,
Right.
We are on the air, and on the air we do not have any physical body. When you're on the telephone or on radio or on TV, you don't have a physical body. You're just an image on the air. When you don't have a physical body, you're a discarnate being. You have a very different relation to the world around you. And this, I think, has been one of the big effects of the electric age. It has deprived people really of their private identity. Everybody tends to merge his identity with other people at the speed of light. It's called being mass man. It began, say, quite a long time ago.
The discarnate question was a major insight into the effects of electricity and of electric media. We have so much more of it around us now, it gets very hard to see, hard to talk about. My father was pointing out simply that electrically, you are simultaneously present both here and there, on the air, on the radio, on television, as now, or on the telephone. You're here, but you're also there in every real sense except one. Your body is stuck in one place. But that doesn't stop you from operating. Your discarnate or disembodied intelligence is perfectly sentient, perfectly able to work at that end as well as here. It makes the body obsolete. The body is no longer laying down the ground rules for how you behave and how you exist in this global village or global theater. At that point, the body assumes a different kind of significance. And when that happened to us in the 50s, 60s, 70s, we went through a revolution of attitudes to the body. It became an art form. We discovered replaceable parts and so on. We started to program our bodies with drugs as never before because we had this new image, this new sense of the body as programmable, as an aesthetic object.
And all this is somehow an effect of the electronic age?
Oh, no. But people in all times have been this way. Mm-hmm. But in our time, when things happen very quickly, there's very little time to adjust to new situations at the speed of light. There's very little time to get accustomed to anything.
When my father talks about events occurring at the speed of light, he's using a metaphor for electric media. With mechanical media, things occurred at a much slower pace, obviously. I mean, it took days to do something that now takes seconds or minutes. On the telephone, on the radio, you are present instantly at the other end at the speed of light, at the speed of electricity. And when things occur that quickly, when things from around the world hit you that quickly in this global theater, you don't have time to think or to back off and be objective or detached. You're immediately plunged in medias res, and it becomes not a matter of cognition and thinking or reacting mentally, but perception. You react instantly, and you're changed instantly by everything that impinges on you. Alec Layton said, "To the blind, all things are sudden." And in the electric world, everything is sudden. There's nothing gradual. No build-up, no let-down. It's just boom, right between the eyes.
I have always been very careful never to predict anything that had not already happened. The future is not what it used to be.
Have you ever read any of Marshall's aphorisms? Some of them are ping, right on the button. The answers are always inside the problem, not outside. Invention is a mother of necessities. Only puny secrets need protection. Big discoveries are protected by public incredulity. All advertising advertises advertising. When you are on the phone or on the air, you have nobody. Today, the business of business is the constant invention of new business. Now, this, I think, is quite apropos of our times now. Violence is the effort to maintain or restore a weakened psyche. He could see right into the heart of a matter. No problem. Next. Oh, he was an amazing critter.
Pattern recognition is a key to a lot of my father's work. He got the idea, in studying media, there's no sequence, no logical approach that works. You have to look at the entire field, at the way changes are played out or occur in all sorts of areas at once. And that is called pattern recognition. IBM had a phrase that he used to use a lot when he was talking about television. People complained about information overload. So the answer to information overload is that you don't try to learn the things, you look at patterns in the information. Nowadays we call that knowledge management.
On being a Canadian, I think Northrop Frye says that one of the things Canada gives you is a chance to be an observer.
Yes, because you're not too deeply involved in other people's problems. And our own problems are relatively small compared to other people's problems.
And a certain freedom then?
Yeah. It does. And so you can be an Ann Landers to the world.
One of the main reasons my father liked Canada as a place to live and work was that it was a backward country, and he found that a very valuable position. The disadvantage of living in a forward area like the U.S. was that you're surrounded by the things that you want to study, and they tend to be invisible. When you're looking at it over the fence, as it were, from next door, they become very visible, very easy to see. And he found that position not only remarkable, but most useful. He wouldn't have wanted to live anywhere else or work anywhere else.
He chose to stay in Canada because he was a Canadian. Oh, he was much more appreciated in the States in those days than he was in Canada. Canada tended to, and maybe still does, undervalue its own sons, whereas Marshall was beginning to be widely accepted in Europe and certainly in the States. So, but he wanted to come back despite all my pulling.
And we have some recent experience of terrorists. The terrorist doesn't want to become something. He doesn't have a goal. He's not trying to establish anything. He wants to disestablish. He wants to, above everything else, work with being, not becoming. He's trying to be something, and he doesn't like what we be.
New technology, you say, is a revolutionizing agent.
Yes, it creates new situations to which people have very little time to adjust. They become alienated from themselves very quickly, and then they seek all sorts of bizarre outlets to establish some sort of identity by put-ons. Show business has become one way of establishing identity by just put-ons. And without the put-on, you're a nobody. And so people are learning show business as an ordinary daily way of survival. It's called role-playing.
Every new technology means a new way of seeing, feeling, thinking, perceiving. If you look at your world and people around you differently, in effect, you are different, just as different as they are. So a new kind of identity is established. And the new identities are all group. Group identities mean role-playing. Unless you have an audience, you don't have a role. Unless you're participating in a group, you don't have a role. You may have a job or a private identity, but the roles come with the group and with the audience. When my father said something about role-playing being survival, he was thinking or anticipating in his thinking the idea of the global theater, which is where everybody is in role all the time. And unless you have a role, you are nobody.
Do you know that there's very little prose that you can read out loud? The moment most prose has never been written for the ear at all, and when you have to suddenly read it in public, a quote, you suddenly realize you're reading the work of a man who never heard what he was writing.
Well, a lot of dialogue is very convincing in novels. When someone tries to put it on the screen, it's terrible. And I imagine that Dickens might suffer that fate.
I'm not sure. There have been quite a number of movies made of his work. I suppose they've been adapted rather than just repeated.
Yeah, I don't know whether they've actually used it.
There is a real oral tradition behind Dickens. He's not a literary man and only became respectable as a literary figure in the 30s, 40s. In fact, I don't think until television did the English critics accept Dickens as a serious literary force. He was farce, not force, up until TV.
Do you feel that the fact that you and I have enjoyed the rewards of literacy, that we are more protected against television than
Yes, I think you get a certain immunity, just as you get a certain immunity from booze by literacy. The literate man can carry his liquor, the tribal man cannot. That's why in the Muslim world or in the native world, you cannot, booze is impossible. It's the demon rum. However, literacy also, though, makes us very accessible to ideas and propaganda. The literate man is the natural sucker for propaganda. You cannot propagandize a native. You can sell him rum and trinkets, but you cannot sell him ideas. Therefore, propaganda is our Achilles heel. It's our weak point. We will buy anything if it's got a good hard sell tied to it. And so propaganda is the great big soft spot in the makeup of the literate man.
Missionaries found many, many years ago, a century or two ago, that they couldn't convey the message of the Bible until they had taught the natives to read and write. It wasn't that they needed to read the Bible, but the fact is that literacy split the private consciousness off from that of the group. And with literacy, specifically the alphabet, with that power to break the group bond, that was the wedge that the propagandist needs. Until you can break the individual consciousness off, there's no way in. They are impervious to outside ideas. They live in a world of propaganda of their own making and their own being. And until you can split them apart with literacy, there's no way to propagandize or get any new idea in. The moment they become literate, they are suckers for propaganda. They're ready for ideas. It's a problem that we have with the kids now, who are becoming immune to propaganda from the older generation, from the elders in the world. And the reason they're immune is, again, they're not very literate, but they're very strong in their group identity and group sense.
What about the multicultural mosaic?
That is an amazing ploy to preserve the cultural identity of Quebec and other minorities.
Why do you call it a ploy, though?
It's a sort of an official ending of Melting Pot. The Quebecois are terrified of being merged in the American culture. I think it's as simple as that. And I think they're right. They're absolutely vulnerable. We're all vulnerable to the Americans, and they're a very attractive and wonderful people, and I think we could easily become merged in their lives, as we intend to be anyway.
Well, does that mean that in order to lessen their fears, we attempt to paralyze different immigrant groups coming in at the state of their arrival?
And keep their cultures intact and separate. That is what the meaning of the multicultural mosaic. The mosaic is static. It isn't in a state of constant inter-inanimation or interplay. No, it's static. And that's exactly the way the French want to remain. They want to remain just the way they are. And so it's not that easy. So this is an amazing, as I say, ploy developed to make this possible. I don't know if it will work, but I certainly don't wish them ill on this maneuver. It is a kind of media ecology, you see. It's a way of using our available resources in the communication to keep people apart and to keep them intact without merging. So I think it's a drastic move. I never heard of it occurring in any other country, did you? I never heard of a multicultural mosaic as an idea for immigration. It's an amazing strategy of survival. Survival, however, is a legitimate goal in life, especially in a fast-changing world.
One effect of the new movement electronically around the world on the internet is that it makes every nation multicultural. Every nation in the world is now filled with people from everywhere around the world, electronically. Equally, every culture becomes multinational. We are all nomads, we are all wandering around the universe, and we are all in a state of desperate need for identity.
most news is literally fake because it has to be made, then selected. And the very, very tiny bits that are actually written up and reported and presented to the public are fictions in every sense of the word, aren't they? That is, they're fictions in the sense that they do not correspond to actually what's going on. But they are made literally, created. The media themselves can now create events that are so much bigger than people, so much bigger than the audience, that it really is a new mythic form. The coverage of the Vietnam War is done by more people than who are actually fighting in Vietnam. The numbers of people covering the Vietnam business around the world and participating in it through newscasts, the numbers are many, many millions. And so the war then becomes a fiction, a colossal fiction.
The idea of fakery in the media is a very appealing one. The word fake, actually, and the word fact are the same word. They both come from Latin, facio, meaning to make. Both fakes and facts are things made. And the news, what is it the New York Times used to have on the masthead? All the news fit to print? Darn right, it's fit. It's fit to that medium of print. Only now we have news fit to the internet and news fit to television and news fit to radio and so on. And the media fit the battle. But to the news, of course, all of the news is fake in the sense that it's made. It's constructed. You don't have the event. You have a new situation, a new event called news. And it has its own properties and its own dynamics. The content of the news is some other event or place. But the news itself, of course, is always fake.
I have been told by reporters from the north of Ireland that when the news is not on, and the cameras are ready to go, the public is all out in the streets, ready to go into action as soon as the cameras are.
That's marvelous. That
they all retire inside to watch the news and then come outside to participate in covering the news and in acting it out themselves. Now, I think the difference between hired actors and the public itself is tending to merge.
At the sound of the tone, followed by the long dash, the exact time will be...
I think the people who took off from Pound and Eliot and who were writing after the war were really neglected the oral side of, say, of someone like Eliot or Pound, and were more in love with the fact that someone like Pound was filling his work with scholarly allusions, with mythical allusions, and it became a totally...
mythic study, and very anthropologically oriented, archaeologically oriented, very learned. But the fact is, those poets themselves came out of the age of radio and would have been unthinkable without that radio ground around them. And the whole of the English language took on a tremendous new oral life from radio. I'm sure that this was carried straight on into jazz and rock music.
Electric media contribute to the return of orality simply by bypassing writing and literature. Literacy is not a precondition for any of these media. And they work equally well in societies that don't have writing. They're not at all impeded in their operation by the presence or absence of literacy. They simply ignore it.
The comic, when he gets up in front of people, puts people on by twisting their arms. The jokes a comic tells are the ones that cut very close to the bone and close to home. And unless the jokes come close to home, they don't have any relevance and don't have any put-on value. So the ethnic jokes are the ones that are closest to home.
When my father used the term the put-on, he was using a term from the 60s and 70s. But it relates to a sudden new awareness of audience. You can't put on until you have someone or something to put on. And the only person who puts on anything or anybody is a role player. So it's a very complex thing. It relates to role-playing and to the effect of the new media and to the demands that they put on us all the time. to be aware of audience and to be aware of the social dynamics of every nuance, every gesture, every action.
A put-on, therefore, tends to be a way of hurting the public. It's an act of aggression against people, and I think a writer, when he picks up his pen, has to put on his public that way. He has to, if he has something to say, it's going to hurt.
You don't command the attention of an audience by being nice to it. You have to twist the arm. Once you've got their attention, you've got to twist their arm and jab them a few times in order to keep them. Partly in order to make them an audience, and partly in order to keep their attention.
Role-playing has become the normal mode of survival in the business world. Jobs have disappeared, as it were, but role-playing has come in on a huge scale. And it's much more flexible than job holding. And jobs are rather static, repetitive things, whereas role-playing is very flexible. You can play many roles, but you can only have one job at a time.
But the important thing for the role player is the audience, is the ground, the other people. The role is not performed in the abstract. It's always in relation to a group or to a situation. So role-playing in these days of global theater and internet, role-playing is everything.
In Quebec, for example, they define it as the...
We've seen some examples in the last few years in Europe, in Asia, around the world of similar separatist movements occurring, countries breaking up, old tribal groups reasserting themselves. This is all exactly part of the global theater and the way in which electric media revive these old antipathies. When you throw people together, especially people without identities, or if you rub off the identity, you throw them together closely, they have to become violent.
It's like the playback in modern sports. This is surely one of the greatest art forms of our time, the instant playback, the instant replay, which concentrates attention on the actual process of the game. I've asked various footballers, what's this done to your actual play? And they tell me we've had to change the play, open it up a bit so that people can see it as if it were replay.
He regarded the instant replay as an enormously powerful and influential art form because until then, until the TV instant replay, we had never had a way of revisiting immediately an experience. T.S. Eliot pointed out in one of his poems, we had the experience but missed the meaning. The replay gives you the meaning, minus the experience.
The investigations now of the CIA and the FBI and even our own, God forbid, RCMP, has this anything to do with the electronic age?
Well, yes, because we now have the means to keep everybody under surveillance. No matter what part of the world they're in, we can put them under surveillance. It has become one of the main occupations of mankind, just watching other people and keeping a record of their goings-on. This is the way most businesses are run. Every business has a huge espionage sector. And this is called public relations, and it's called audience research. And this is around the clock. And this has become the main business of mankind, just watching the other guy.
And invading privacy.
Invading privacy, in fact, just ignoring it. Everybody has become porous.
Privacy was a side effect of the phonetic alphabet. And my father often spoke about privacy and as it related to the alphabet and to the separation of knower from known, which is a main effect of the alphabet. Electrically, there is no longer any separation, and therefore there is no longer any circumstance that will give rise to privacy. The only cultures in the world that have ever developed privacy or private identity are those who've learned to read with the alphabet. The only ones. There's no impetus in the new media to go in any of those directions. They're all more oriented towards imagery and towards group image and group identity. But private identity and privacy go together. If you remove one, you remove the other, or the conditions for the other. We are now so much under surveillance. I mean, we even have global positioning satellites that monitor where you are or can tell you where you are within a few feet or a meter. There is no purpose for having privacy. It wouldn't serve any function in that world.
Point of view requires stasis, and that's not involvement. So these new media demand that you get involved and become part of the action. The TV image is not like the film image, a simple snapshot. It is an actual live vortex in action, and it, I think, is behind what we call the happening. TV itself is a kind of happening, technically, and it tends to involve people in its own vortex.
My father was particularly taken by the television image because it was different from all of our other experiences of imagery. Different because it wasn't made of pictures. The TV image is a ceaselessly forming mosaic of dots of light that the viewer or the user had to reconstitute in his own imagination from moment to moment. And we'd never had that kind of process or demand placed on us by any of our other media up to that point.
I do remember an incident that's very funny with the expression medium as a message. Jerry Agel in New York had published the little volume, The Medium is a Message. And when it came out, there was a typographical error. They printed it, The Medium is a Massage. And he phoned Marshall and said, "We made a mistake, Marshall. We're going to have to recall the whole whole printing of the book. They made this mistake." Marshall said, "No, hold off, Jerry. The medium is a massage." Yes, the medium is a massage because the medium massages people, their thinking, and the influence of all media. And he said, "Leave it. It's wonderful." So that's how it became a medium is a massage. I always thought that Marshall came up with the expression the global village after his association with Bucky Fuller. I thought it grew out of that. Eric says he doesn't think so. We discussed it at some length at one point. But that was Bucky's belief that the world is a global village. Now, whether Bucky put it into those terms, I don't know. It's been a long time ago.
Well, in 1977, he was thinking of the world as television had left it. And we didn't have really very much in the way of satellites or space travel, and these have transformed that yet again. The global village has become a monstrous theater on which we all play roles. Just consider the internet, if you like, and the way we all have identities, corporate identities, roles, avatars, images that we use of ourselves in order to play on that stage. And that's a small part of the global village. The global village maybe started with the telegraph, when people began to be instantly aware of what was going on around the world as if it were next door. And that was exacerbated enormously by radio and television, but now here we are with a very different, much more intense situation full of terrorists who are searching for identities and trying to destroy ours. The global village is not a happy place.
How much television do you watch?
Whenever I get a chance. Not too often. I missed Rigoletto last night. I was very disappointed.
But you don't watch it that often?
No, I don't have that many opportunities.
My father never watched very much television because, frankly, he never got the habit. He was raised in a time without TV. He'd spend the evenings, grading papers, reading, read a prodigious amount. I suppose he read through 200 or 300 or 400 books a year, which at the time wasn't considered that much, but today is rather incredible.
Work was his life. It wasn't anything he felt pressured to do. It was just his life. As a gardener, for example, thinks of flowers all the time and arranges them and rearranges them. He was thinking of developing ideas without verbalizing what he was doing. But it was his intense intellectual curiosity, really, that drove him.
When an American goes outside, he is himself, he is his private self. He does not put on a mask. Other people, when they go outside, tend to put on masks in speech or in dress or in actions. I suggest that there are no American symphony conductors. Leonard Bernstein, having grown up in his early years, at least in Vienna, that an American musician, no matter how much he knows about orchestras or about publics, is not able to dramatize himself in the way of putting on the whole orchestra as his private mask or corporate mask, nor is he able to put on the whole public as a mask. Whereas a European doesn't even think about this as a problem. When he stands up in front of the orchestra, he ceases to be a private person, becomes an actor instantly. Now, an American not only does not like acting or putting on a public, but he does not put on a corporate or standard voice when he speaks. He uses his private voice. And this, of course, enables the Americans to have no class consciousness and no class structure.
There's no privacy in an American home. Every kid knows this. You want privacy, you go out to a restaurant, you go out on a date, you go out. You go out to the theater, to the movie. We can see this now ending in our world, this pattern of going out for privacy. Because when you go to a theater now, you get advertisements. And advertisements are all privacy invaders. When you go to a theater, now you get ads, and that means that this pattern of Americans going outside for privacy is coming to an end. It's coming to an end for another reason, and that is outside is now all theater, the global theater.
Well, I think anybody who's heard his voice on a recording is appalled at the condition of his vocalizing, and same when he sees himself on TV. I think he resolves he never wants to look at that or like that again. But in other words, the need, I think the need that the media creates is for acting. That people realize that just their plain private self is not adequate to the media. And I think this drives people toward dramatizing.
Electric media rip off any possibility of private identity. The alternative is role-playing. And a role player, given an audience or in need of an audience, begins to act out. He puts on the situation and the people and the grievance and begins to play it. These people are dramatizing a grievance in their lives, a grievance of the loss of identity and the loss of community and the consequent disorientation. It isn't the content that's making them violent at all. It's the situation perpetrated by the new technologies that has brought this violence into their lives and their imaginations. And so they respond by dramatizing and playing it out, perhaps as a way of exercising it.
Commercial enterprises have caught on to the fact that all the networks want on the 6 o'clock news the last item to be something funny. I don't know exactly why this is true. You've been, maybe it's because you've just been slaughtered for half an hour, and they want a little kicker. So it's the last item on the news every day is always really a covert advertisement, pure and simple. Like the last one I remember seeing in New York before leaving was a group of models in bikinis dressed up in ape suits and went to the Central Park Zoo and fed the monkey, in their ape suits, they fed the monkeys bananas. And every single local news station and every network in New York ran this thing as the last item on the show. And it was an advertisement for the conquest of the planet of the apes, of course. And so it's not so much the networks manipulating the news, it's just setting up this system and then other people use it.
This raises something we haven't really talked about, but that is the news has to be a put-on. It has to put on a public. And so the last comic twist in the news would be a way of dismissing the public and saying, so long.